Welcome, everyone, to Global Accessibility Awareness Day. Thank you so much for joining us. This is, of course, another Phenom live session, and it's a very important topic. We're super excited to have you join us. We hope to educate you, inform you on everything accessibility, what Phenom is doing, what GAD is all about, and really hopefully provide you with the most pertinent information around all things accessibility, especially when it comes to career site. Today, I will be joined by a number of Phenom guests to share some wonderful information. And our first guest is actually going to be Parker Bettis. Parker, how are you today?
I'm doing good. How are you doing?
I am doing all right. I am excited. We have a lot of great information to go through. And just a quick refresher for those of you joining us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, whatever it may be, a quick recap on what GAD is all about. So it is, of course, today, Thursday, March the 21st, and it is Global Accessibility Awareness Day. So Parker, I think the first question that makes the most sense is what is Global Accessibility Awareness Day and what is digital accessibility all about?
Yeah, I was hoping we could cue some applause, right? Because this is a big day. It's an exciting day. Global Accessibility Awareness Day is a day for us to bring awareness to digital accessibility, right? There's been a massive migration from brick and mortar establishments over to digital properties. And we need to be sure that those digital properties and the accessibility guidelines that are in place keep up with that migration over to digital environments. So Global Accessibility Awareness Day, or GAD, let's use GAD going forward. That's a little bit of a tongue twister. Is a really important day, but keep in mind, it's not something that we should just think about for one day. People who use screen readers, people who use assistive technologies, for them, GAD is every day, right? Accessibility awareness and accessibility optimizations are things that users need every single day, and not just users with disabilities, right? All users. So improvements and optimizations that we can make to digital properties benefit all people, right? Good design, good code will provide positive impact for all users. So that's something to be aware of.
And Parker, I know that I'm probably not alone in this, but over the past 2 years, I didn't know much about accessibility, right? It wasn't something that I knew about. And thankfully, Phenom last fall announced Phenom Access, which was all around digital accessibility, specifically to career sites. And just preparing for GAD, I saw that they put out some, quite frankly, eye-opening stats around accessibility. They say that over 98% of web pages are not WCAG 2.0 compliant. Now, I now know what WCAG 2.0 compliant means, but what does that mean, to the rest of us? Is there a short and sweet, simple term that we can get from you?
Yeah, so it definitely isn't only you, and I go back to that migration from brick and mortar to digital properties, right? So the ADA set out guidelines, the Americans with Disabilities Act set out guidelines for brick and mortar establishments, right? If you have a bank, there should be a ramp leading up to the entrance of that bank so somebody who's wheelchair enabled can access your property. That same ramp needs to be enabled on the digital property, right? So what WCAG does is WCAG provides specific definitions for digital properties so that businesses can follow these guidelines, meet these criteria. And what they're doing when they do that is they're conforming with the WCAG standard and they're optimizing user experience for people with assistive technologies and, again, all users. So that's really what WCAG is. It's web content accessibility guidelines, and they're guidelines for businesses to follow to provide a better user experience.
Now, I know when I began to learn about digital accessibility, specifically when it came to career sites, it really started last fall for me when Phenom announced Phenom Access. And we actually did an audit on the Fortune 100 companies, right? So the biggest, the largest companies that are on that list each year. And when we dove in and actually took a look at who was accessible and who wasn't, we found that 89% of that Fortune 100 had at least one error of WCAG compliance on their career site. And 46 companies failed at least 3. So we only tested for 6, right? I am sure that there are numerous WCAG compliance standards, but we only tested for those 6. A question from you, because I know that you deal with this on a regular basis. Are we seeing improvements? Are we seeing a trend towards people paying more attention to this?
Yeah, so I think what we saw from what we could extrapolate from that data is that many companies have accessibility deficiencies, right? And the best way to make improvement is to bring awareness to it, to focus on it, and that's exactly what we did with that analysis. I think we are seeing movement generally in the public toward more accessible user interfaces and user experiences. And I say that, or I make that assumption because WCAG has now developed the WCAG 2.1 standard, right? So WCAG is moving away from a 2.0 and they're moving on to a 2.1. So the criteria are changing, people are adopting these criteria, and the guidelines are maturing with that. So I would say there's a shift to it, right? A lot of it is being motivated by legal implications, but a lot of companies are doing it just because it's the right thing to do and because they empathize with their user base, right? And that's exactly the approach that we're taking here.
You're absolutely right. It is the right thing to do, right? No one should be motivated by legal fees or anything like that when it comes to these sorts of things. As we transition towards a digital world, right? We may not even be transitioning. We're pretty much already there, especially during this pandemic, right? Everyone's working from home. We're having all of these meetings. And when we exclude a certain group of people simply because the technology isn't available to them, right? It doesn't comply for their needs. It's truly an awful thing. So I know today we have a big focus around bringing more education to GAD, to accessibility as a whole, but specifically around what Phenom is doing and what career sites are. So I know we have a quick presentation that we are going to walk through with you. So what I'm going to do is I am going to share the presentation that we have, and I will hand it over to you and your team, and I'll kind of hang out in the background if that's all right. You guys are the experts, right?
Awesome. Yeah.
Awesome.
Good. So what we're hoping to do here this Global Accessibility Awareness Day is educate people about frequently asked questions around accessibility. And with this education, we're hoping that companies will move from a defensive approach to a proactive approach on accessibility. Right, so we'll go through some frequently asked questions, maybe some misconceptions. I also have on the line here from the Phenom team, Suman Demera, and Suman is our principal accessibility engineer. He's going to go through a couple of these initial questions. I'll follow him and cover a couple other additional questions, and we'll go through them and we'll highlight them. We'll take questions and we can get it rolling.
Awesome.
Okay, so my name is Suman Damira and working as a Phenom Principal Accessibility Engineer at Phenom People. Thank you, Parker, for inviting me. So let me start with I'm going to cover a couple of questions, and let me start with first question, which is people think accessibility, design is just for the people with disabilities. Is that true? Really, no. Because accessibility design is just not only helps the people with disabilities, it helps all the users. Let's understand that with some scenarios. So let's think like we have a video with the captions on. So we have made those captions for people with hearing impaired. So, but a person who is not having disability, going into some area where there is a lot of noise, and there also people can still understand the video with the captions on. So it's just captions we made for the people with hearing impaired, and it's also benefiting others. Similarly, when we go for the color contrast, so we would have done color contrast everything properly in our website just for the low vision users or different type of users, but it's also going to help other users. Like let's see that example as well. So a person who doesn't have the disability, who do not have the disability, is just going to the sunlight and just bright light and just trying to see the screen, still he or she is able to understand what that content completely is all about. So we are not just when we are trying to do design accessible, we are trying to address as many as users. And it just not only helps the people with disabilities, it also helps people without disabilities as well. And let me tell you another scenario. So there are older age population. So everybody grows, like everybody becomes older, and as once you become older, you might lose a cognition, you might lose a vision a little bit, you might have some partial vision. So all these things, I mean, people who are older also going to get benefited when you make the design accessible. So this is a very myth. I mean, it's very myth that accessible design is just for only people with disabilities. It's for everybody. It's going to benefit everybody. So we'll go to the next topic, that is why alt text is so important. So I mean, let me give you an example, like brand logos. Like we have every website, we have the brand logos. Like for example, Phenom logo in Phenom site, YouTube, Google logo in Google site, and so on. I mean, if you don't provide alt text, then screen readers would not read anything for those alt text. So it's going to be a nightmare for the person with visually impaired. So similarly, when we see a lot of social networking icons like Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and so on different websites. Imagine if they don't have alt text. People with screen reader users will not be able to understand what that complete icon is all about, because screen readers will not read anything when we navigate to those icons because they don't have alt text provided. So it's important to provide alt text for those icons to make sure visually impaired users are included on the web. So see, let me give you another example. So while uploading any pictures in the Facebook or any social media network, for that case, we see alt text as an option while uploading the pictures. People might think, why this is alt text is all for, so let me just skip that and let me add the photo. But that's really going to be very tough when we skip that alt text, because if you don't add the alt text, and people who your visually impaired friends are not going to read that, will not be able to really understand what that image is all about. So it's going to be a nightmare without alt text for all the images. So providing alt text is very important to include people with visually impaired on your web. So, and at Phenom, so we have a CMS platform. I mean, at Complete Talent Experience Management, we have a CMS platform, and we also provide alt text as a one form field while uploading the pictures, and CMS user can just upload the pictures or images and add alt text. So we at the platform level are providing the alt text and making sure the Phenom platform is compliant with WCAG guidelines. And my colleague Parker is going to continue the couple of the questions.
Cool. Yeah, so I think I just want to highlight one thing. I think you talked about this really well. Accessibility has much greater implications than its benefit to people with disabilities, right? You talk about the aging population. You talk about temporary scenarios, whether I'm in an area that is very well lit, right, and color contrast may be impacted by that lighting. So we're talking about conforming with WCAG guidelines, employing empathy to be sure that users have a better experience. So I really appreciate that insight. The next thing we're going to talk about here, and Suman, you touched on this, is video captions and why they're important. So I think for me specifically, right, video captions, I almost prefer watching videos sometimes without audio, right? If I'm in a crowded room, or if I'm sneaking a look at my phone, maybe I'm watching a video and I don't want anybody else to know that I'm watching that video, right? Just a hypothetical situation. I might just look at the captions and be able to determine what the video is about and get context that way. So again, video captions aren't just important for people with maybe hearing loss. They can have collateral benefits. So that's what we're looking at for video captions. We need to be sure that they're there in all videos. WCAG provides criteria for this, right? WCAG says you should provide video captions for all pre-recorded content. What we're doing in the Phenom platform. So we have our experience management tools, right? The CMS. When users go in there, the same way they add alt text to images, when they upload images to the CMS. Users can also upload a closed caption file for any pre-recorded content that they want to put on their career site. So we do allow that. We do have that availability. We have an input there for users to add a closed caption file to their videos, and that's how we're enabling that.
And Parker, I think that is so important, especially as we're in this kind of work from home world, right? And content is obviously king. We are sending out, a tremendous amount of videos every single day, but we have to keep in mind, people have loved ones at home. They have little ones that they may put down for a nap or for bed, and they can't listen to the volume of a video at a level that they typically would. So closed captioning allows you to repurpose this content for people in any scenario where they're at. So it truly is just helping people, right? We're not focused on people with disabilities, but people in general, and it's going to help all of them.
Yeah. So what does digital accessibility compliance mean, and how can it be achieved? So digital accessibility compliance strictly relates to WCAG conformance, right, and conforming with the guidelines. But you can do so much more than that, right? You can employ empathetic design. You can employ empathy and not just look at the standards and the criteria that are in place. But what we're really talking about with inclusive strategies and accessibility design is building environments that can be usable by all people. What we do here at Phenom is we have canvases that are available for our career sites. Those canvases, the source code for those canvases have been optimized to conform with WCAG standards. Currently WCAG 2.0, but of course, as new standards are released, WCAG 2.1, we are adopting those criteria also. We're making sure to optimize our canvases with those criteria in mind. We're also implementing very, very cool features within the CMS. So again, as users are in the CMS uploading content, they can be alerted of accessibility deficiencies or accessibility shortcomings in the content that they're uploading there. So as far as achieving accessibility with the Phenom platform, there are many things that we're doing to enable customers to provide that real optimized user experience for all the candidates that visit their site. And that's really what we're looking at for compliance. And Phenom is definitely, absolutely helping companies to expedite that conformance with the standard.
Yeah, it's interesting, Parker, because compliance is an interesting term, right? It means you're working towards achieving that level of satisfaction, right? And I think that the most important thing here to remember for organizations is that there isn't simply a switch for accessibility to turn on, right? Where your entire digital footprint will then be accessible. I think it's the act of continuing to work towards that and continuing to improve it bit by bit until it is at a satisfactory level, right? So as we continue to develop new technology and new experiences online continue to change, it's an uphill battle, and it will continue to be. But the important part is continuing to take steps forward to be as digitally accessible as you possibly can.
I think that is an amazing point, right? Accessibility isn't a switch. It's not something that you turn on, right? It's something you work toward. But then even from there, web environments are living and breathing. I could add a new page, right, tomorrow. And when I add that new page, there are accessibility criteria that I need to keep in mind, right? There are things that I need to do to that new content to be sure that it conforms. So we're talking about bringing a web environment, bringing a digital property to compliance, and then maintaining and monitoring that compliance for the long term, right? Developing sustainable long-term strategies as an organization to include users of all abilities. And that's the point of accessibility, is it's not a one-time thing. It's an ongoing process. You don't build a ramp up to a bank for a week and then remove that ramp and then build another one a couple days later. It's a long-term strategy that you have to stay on top of. So you be sure that you're including all users and that you're able to really capture the most diverse talent. And that's what we're looking at here, right? You want to be sure you're reaching all people and that you're including users of all abilities.
Yeah. So one more point is we are just not only going with the compliance. Sometimes at few places we are also going beyond compliance and providing the best experience to the users. And we are trying to do at many places to provide we are trying that in many places to provide the best experience.
Yep.
So I'm just wanted to mention that because we are going more beyond compliance as well sometimes. Yeah.
And so Devin, we talk about maintaining and monitoring, right? And we talk about testing web environments. So another frequently asked question is, what percentage of accessibility issues can be detected via automation, right? And this is something that's really interesting because you see a lot of automated tools out there. Phenom, here at Phenom, we've developed our own automation engine. So we're able to detect accessibility issues via automation, right? Via the logic that we've put together and that we're using to test every single site. But only about 50% of accessibility issues can really be identified via automation. The other 50% can only be uncovered by somebody who is manually testing the site with their keyboard or with a screen reader. And what they're able to do is they're able to identify usability issues, right? So usability is above and beyond WCAG criteria. And I know, Suman, you work with this extensively. You use your keyboard and you use your screen reader to go through sites on top of the automated testing that we do. And what you do is you uncover issues that we weren't able to identify with automated testing.
That's true. Yeah.
So I think that's really important. Is not only to have an automated testing strategy. There are free tools out there to use. Again, at Phenom, we've developed our own automated engine, but also as a company to determine which department or which members of your team can commit time to manually test or usability test this environment from the perspective of somebody with a screen reader or from the perspective of somebody who is low vision and maybe not using a mouse because they can't see their keyboard or they can't see the cursor. But somebody who's using their keyboard to navigate a web environment, right? You got to be sure that a website is keyboard accessible, it's screen reader accessible, and those things can only be uncovered via manual testing. They cannot be found with accessibility testing. So here at Phenom, we cover both sides of this, right? We do have our automated engine, and we have people like Suman and our accessibility team who go through, manually test, identify issues, and work to resolve those issues across our entire platform.
Parker, that's awesome, right? Like, it is fantastic to have the resources and the team at Phenom to help pick up on those things that technology may leave behind, right? And obviously at Phenom, we have a robust platform, right? We have the 4 experiences. And today we talked a lot about the career site and the accessibility around that. I know that we are working across platforms to make it as accessible as possible, and it is a process to do so, right? There's no switch that we can turn on. But are there any other accessibility features that you wanted to call out about the Phenom TXM platform?
Sure. Yeah, we're talking about candidate experience and career site. Obviously, we're optimizing our canvases to include users of all abilities. Similarly, for the employee experience, we're ensuring that those internal mobility environments have those same optimizations and those same beneficial attributes in place. So you have the external website, you have the internal environment, both being optimized for accessibility. What we're also doing is we've optimized our chatbot, right? Our proprietary chatbot is now WCAG 2.0 accessible. Somebody with a screen reader and somebody navigating with their keyboard can interact with our chatbot with very few limitations, little to no limitations, right? So we're empowering users to have a greater experience by optimizing our career sites, our internal mobility environments, chatbot, and we're doing all these things obviously to improve the user experience, keep candidates on sites, and to help companies capture that diverse talent. So really across our entire platform, we're thinking about accessibility. We're baking it into the product. Devin, you mentioned last fall, we really started this initiative, and that's what we're doing, right? We're baking accessibility into all products. Some companies will build products and then they'll retrofit accessibility, right? They'll take a product from planning, design, development, production, and then they'll go back and say, okay, let's change these things to make it more accessible. What we're doing here at Phenom is we're ensuring that at the planning stage, we are considering accessibility implications, right? We say, if we are going to build this feature, what do we need to enable so that all users can access that feature, right? So we're baking it into the product.
It's a great way to look at it, Parker. And the analogy that I would like to share for that is, as if you're building a car, right? And the car is driving down the road, and then you're like, oh no, I need to change the tires for this particular environment. It's significantly more challenging to do that than having the foresight to initiate that process beforehand. And it'll save you time and also make the accessibility access so much more readily available if you plan that in ahead, right? So
I think even maybe a better example is building a car and then driving down the road and recognizing, hey, I need a seatbelt. There's no seatbelt in this car, right? I mean, the seatbelt comes with the car. Accessibility comes with the product, and that's really the approach we're taking.
Yeah, it's not the 1950s anymore. We all need seatbelts. So let's review the value, right, of these FAQs. Join the movement to give over 1 billion people equal access to career sites, both internal and external, as well as chatbot. Parker, I'll hand the next one over to you.
Yeah, so obviously it's important to prioritize a couple of the things that we talked about. Alt text and video captions are extremely valuable. Suman mentioned color contrast too. Obviously, color contrast is something that has massive implications, right? It has implications for temporary situations. And Phenom out of the box is providing a lot of these solutions. We have our team of experts who manually test. We have our technology-first approach with our automation engine to detect accessibility issues. So what we're doing is not only are we encouraging our customers to think about alt text for their video or alt text for their images and captions for their videos, but we're also providing solutions to expedite that process for them. And we leverage the experts on our team to make sure that we're implementing things the right way and that we're baking accessibility into the product from the onset.
Awesome. Parker, thank you so much for sharing all of this. This has been, and you as well, Suman, has been tremendously helpful for me. And I know both of you were on stage a couple months ago before all of the craziness at I Am Phenom, and you shared your stories. We heard great responses around all of that. And again, the goal is to spread awareness of accessibility, right? We want to get more people to think about this when they're building digital technologies, when they're building those digital ramps and rails, as you put it. And even if someone doesn't turn to Phenom for accessibility, just having the mindset that this is important and people need to pay attention is truly something special. So thank you both. I greatly appreciate you joining me on this live stream. Is there any parting shots, anything that you'd like to add?
I would say, yeah, thanks for having us. I think with the awareness and with the education comes less fear. And when companies have less fear around accessibility and more knowledge about how to fix accessibility, they become less defensive and more proactive, right? They recognize the value and they understand it's not such a hairy beast to tackle. It's something that there are guidelines out there for them to follow, and that companies like Phenom are building products and delivering solutions to help them along the way.
Suman?
Yeah, thank you so much for giving the opportunity, and let us spread the awareness about the accessibility. It's not a one-day job, and we have to do every day this accessibility. So it's not just one day. So let's all work together to make sure people with disabilities are included in the mainstream, and let them lead their life like independently with equality.
Thank you so much. Yes, this isn't just a one-day job. It is going to continue on, and it isn't just for people with disabilities, right? It is for everyone. I saw in the chat, John typed in the motion sensor doors, right? Walking into a store is completely changed. That started with accessibility, and it's great for everyone. This is great for everyone as a whole. So thank you all for joining. As always, you can reach out to us at Phenom. You can follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, wherever you need, and reach out. And we're happy to have accessibility conversations with you. Thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So much.